Hare Krishna. Welcome to our weekly sessions on life lessons from Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we are going to discuss the second shloka of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we will understand this verse in greater detail. The second verse says, Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo nirmatsaranam satam Vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapatrayoन्मूलनम् श्रीमद्भागवते महामुनिकृते किं वा परेरीश्वरा सद्यो हृदयवरुध्यते प्रकृतिभिः शुश्रूस्तुभिस्तक्षणात्. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Puran propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Last week, last two sessions, we discussed the first verse. Today, we will start with the second. So, if you see the first line, there are 4 lines in the shloka. Now, we'll take the first line first. The first line of the shloka says, Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. Dharma projita. Projita means reject. Bhagavatam rejects. Bhagavatam completely rejects what? Dharma, religion. What kind of religion it rejects? Dharma projita kaitava, cheating religion. So this is the first point in the second shloka today. The Srimad Bhagavatam rejects all kinds of cheating religion. Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo. And not only that, it gives us the highest reality, the highest truth. And you may say, oh really? Bhagavatam gives us the highest reality and it kicks out all cheating religion. Can I understand that? The Bhagavatam says, yes, nirmat saranam satam. Devotees who are free from envy can understand this aspect of Srimad Bhagavatam. You may say, oh really? Bhagavatam gives us the highest truth. Oh, Bhagavatam kicks out all cheating religion. It can be understood by devotees. But what exactly is this highest truth? That is explained in the second line. Vedyam vastava matra vastu shivadam tapatrayoन्मूलनम. Vedyam vastava matra vastu shivadam. That is reality distinguished from illusion, which is bringing welfare to all. You may say this is very, very cryptic and abstract. Can you be more specific? Therefore, the last word of the second line says, Tapatrayoन्मूलनम. This reality is so powerful. Bhagavatam is propounding that truth which will uproot the threefold miseries in our heart. There are miseries caused by 3 energies, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. We will discuss that soon. So these miseries will be finished by Srimad Bhagavatam. After hearing all of this, one may say, wow, that's something great. So, but how come everything is in Bhagavatam? How come Bhagavatam is able to access the highest truth and relieve us from all suffering? What is so special about Bhagavatam? The speciality is it was compiled by none other than Vyasadeva. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite. He compiled it in his maturity. Kimva Parerishwara. So there is no other need of any other scripture. And when we take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, immediately in the heart, takshanat, immediately, sadhyo hridaya varuddhate prakritibi shushru. If you just hear Bhagavatam sincerely, the Lord will be established in the heart. So this is the message of the second shloka of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now we will spend some time discussing in detail the different phrases or the different words of this second shloka. But the first is Dharma projita kaitava atra So the cheating religion is kicked out in Srimad Bhagavatam. Now religion has been misused. We all know Karl Marx, the great philosopher of the last century, who made this famous statement that religion is the opium of the masses. He said religion is a drug and people are suffering. And of course, he was an extremist in that sense. But he had a point that sometimes people cheat in the name of religion. There are religious systems which spread hatred. Hmm? So Bhagavatam kicks out all those kinds of religion. Now, actually, what Bhagavatam kicks out is Bhagavatam has no place for religion which is below the standard of pure love. Now, religion can be practiced at different levels. You know, God, people approach God because of four motivations. Or there are four levels at which people approach God. There are religious systems which encourage people to accept God out of fear. Fear is a great motivation. Oh, if you don't do this, you'll get this reaction. You have to do, you'll go to hell and God will burn you in the hell. So fear motivates a lot of people to go to temples, to do puja and all of those things because they're worried. They're afraid of what will happen if they don't do it. So it's like, a child obeys his parents or, he serves his parents because he's afraid, my father would punish me if I don't do what my father wants me to do. So fear could motivate a child, fear could motivate a believer of God. But the second motivation is reward. The first is called Bhaya Buddhi. Bhaya Buddhi means intelligence governed by Bhaya, fear. But there are some, a child may be motivated to follow what his father says because he thinks my father would give me a chocolate, my father would give me an ice cream. So the reward motivates the child to serve the instructions of his father. So that's called Asha Buddhi, Asha, desire. So Bhagavatam says both these are low levels of motivations to follow God. There is a little higher level, which is called Kartavya Buddhi. Some people follow God's instructions because they feel duty bound. God is so kind. God has given us so much. He is so kind. He's giving us the sun, the light, the rain, the heat. So we need to be grateful. So out of a sense of duty, they obey God's instructions. Like a child, he serves his parents because he feels duty bound. My parents have done so much for me. So that sense of duty motivates the child. That sense of duty motivates a believer of God to follow God's instructions. So there are the three levels: fear, Bhaya Buddhi, Asha Buddhi, and Kartavya Buddhi. But Srimad Bhagavatam insists, or Bhagavatam is presenting us religion at the fourth level, which is love, prema. The child is obeying or doing serving his parents not because he is afraid or he wants rewards or is a sense of duty, but because he loves his parents, and that is the highest level of service. So a devotee serves God not because he's afraid of God, not because he wants something from God, also not because of a sense of duty, but because he genuinely loves God. So Bhagavatam is teaching us this level of religion, and therefore it is said, Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. This first line is very important in this verse because Bhagavatam's, it's like introducing a person, like when you introduce a big industrialist in a, let's say there's an annual general body meeting of your shareholders, and there's an introduction, and imagine the introduction is, okay, he's he's done his engineering from IIT, he's like this, he's like whatever, you say lofty things. So Bhagavatam is being introduced to the readers, and the Bhagavatam is being introduced as a scripture that kicks out religion which is low standard. Means the Bhagavatam has a very high standard. Okay, you want to follow God, you want to serve God, then you should be at the level of love. That is why when Srila Prabhupada presented Srimad Bhagavatam, when he went to America in the 1960s, mid-1960s, I mean, he was such a broad-minded spiritual teacher that people would ask him questions on Jesus Christ, Prophet Muhammad, Islam, Christianity. He said, we are not for conversion. You can follow whatever religion you want, But are you following the principles mentioned in Bhagavatam 1.2.6? You would say, Savai pumsam paro dharmo eto bhakti radokshade ahetukya pratyataya atma sutrafidati. If you're loving God without any ulterior motive, and your loving service to God is uninterrupted, then you are following the perfect path, whether you are a Muslim or a Christian or a Hindu. So that is the gold standard of a sincere teacher and a student of Bhagavatam. That's why you'll see Bhagavatam students will never be fanatics. They have no problems with Christians or Muslims. They have no problems with conversions because they are looking for essence. Are you loving God? Of course, culturally, we have to save our Vedic culture. That there are cultural issues that we are not discussing that. But when it comes to philosophy, when it comes to the truth, our focus is we focus on the quality, pure love of God. We don't want to serve God because we're afraid of God. We don't want to serve God because we want something from Him. We don't want to serve God only because it's a sense of duty. Duty will not be inspiring. Duty will not nourish you. But we want to serve God because we love God. And Bhagavatam will teach us systematically how to develop love for Krishna. And when there is love, a relationship is dynamic. When there is love, you want to be with your beloved. You want to serve your beloved. Love makes everything beautiful. Love makes life worth living. Love makes everything fresh and exciting. Love gives hope, right? So same thing happens in religion also. Any religious path, any spiritual path where there is love, you will see those practitioners are blissful, joyful, they're full of life. Wherever there is rituals, they're fanatics. They always want to kill each other. They become blind. One who is experiencing love will never hate anyone. So Bhagavatam kicks out this substandard religion. And in India, especially, it's a spiritual supermarket. Every day the new gods are booming up in different parts of India. So Bhagavatam dismisses these kind of things. Every week you find a new god somewhere appearing, and that's tragic because you can't just manufacture your own religion. And in India, especially, I've seen people like religion because it gives them a feeling that they are good. We all like to be pious. We need pious entertainment. We all need entertainment, right? But some of us feel guilty because of sense gratification. So we substitute sense gratification with pious entertainment. It's like, okay, well, I have my sense gratification, but why not have a Bhagavad Saptah? Why not attend some spiritual discourse? So that will give me a feeling that, okay, I'm also spiritual. No, Bhagavatam wants you to dive deep into spirituality, not simply superficially, just get a tick. Okay, I am also religious, I have a guru, I have a spiritual guru. Uh, you know, Bhagavatam will dismiss all those superficial aspects of religion. Like in India, I've seen many of us, we want the certificate of being religious or spiritual. It's like, it's like you eat, you eat dahi vada. Dahi vada is a very famous Indian Indian item. So dahi vada, when they serve you dahi vada, it's like soft, it's nice, and on top of it they put coriander leaves, dhania patta. It's to embellish the, but the main item is dahi vada. That has to be tasty. The dahi has to be not kadwa, khatta. It can't be khatta. It has to be good, and the vada has to be soft, and it has to be just right. And a little bit of coriander leaves is like just a topping. But you're not served a plate of coriander leaves. That's not the main dish. The main dish is dahi vada. On top of it, little dhania patta is put. Similarly, for many of us, sense gratification is the dahi vada. I want to enjoy unlimitedly, unrestrictedly. And let me sprinkle a little dhania patta like religion on top of this dahi vada. Okay, just to make my dahi vada tasty, just to make my enjoyment little, my enjoyment would be good if I have a little bit of religion sprinkled on top of it. It will give me a like, aha, okay, I've got some, I'm also doing something religious. That kind of, you don't feel guilty then, you know. The Srimad Bhagavatam, the 6th canto, calls this as cheating religion with an example. Kvachin nivartate badrat, kvacit charati tat punaha, prayaschittam atopartam manye kunjara shauchavat. Parikshit Maharaj says that the religion which many of us follow is like kunjara shauchavat, the bathing of an elephant. He says an elephant spends hours and hours in the river taking bath, and then he comes out and puts all the mud over him again. So that bathing is useless. Similarly, we may engage in a lot of sense gratification, a lot of religion, and then again we engage in sense gratification. It's basically we don't really do spiritual. We don't actually follow spiritual path. But Bhagavatam is meant for those who are interested in loving Krishna. Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo. And who can appreciate this supreme truth, this aspect of Bhagavatam? Nirmatsaranam satam. Devotees who are free from envy. Devotees who are open-hearted, who love God, they'll be able to appreciate this aspect of Srimad Bhagavatam. See, generally, if you see, most religions teach about God as somebody who gives us our daily bread and butter, who supplies us our needs. But Bhagavatam presents God as someone whom we love so much that we take care of his needs. It's different. Mother Yashoda was not asking from God things. She wanted to give God. That this chapel in Rome where Michelangelo's painting is there, God is shown as, some light, some old man, and the light coming out of him. It's on the ceiling of that chapel. And everybody's looking like this. It's like, it's awe-inspiring light coming from God. But if you see the Srimad Bhagavatam painting, 10th canto, Krishna stealing butter, Mother Yashoda is chasing him with a stick, and Krishna is like, he's afraid of his mother. This is the difference between our religion, the way we present, and Semitic religions. Here, God is presented as someone who's like afraid of is in awe of his devotee, his mother. That means the love, the desire to serve and please the Lord is so intense that the knowledge about God's Godhood is covered. I mean, that's pure love. Of course, we can't artificially pretend to be on that level, but at least we know that that's our aspiration. One day we want to love Krishna so much that we don't want to ask anything from him. Okay, you ask yourself in life, when somebody gives you something without expecting anything in return, don't you feel really obliged to that person? We always meet people who want things from us, and it's all about give and take. And we also are quite smart, and we also live in that world. But if we in this milieu, if we meet someone who is genuinely selfless, we are purchased. We really want to give. I have experienced this once when I went to Mayapur many years ago. There was an Ekadashi, and I was chanting in Prabhupada's Samadhi temple. And one of the pujaris there saw me, and he said, "Oh, Prabhuji, prasad payenge." It's a Bengali, heavy Bengali accent. And my cynical mind, because I was in management at that time in temple, and managers are always cynical, nothing impresses them, and they think everybody has an agenda. So I was a manager, and when I saw this Bengali devotee approach me and said, "Prabhu, prasad payenge," and I was like very hungry. It was an Ekadashi, and I was wondering if somebody will give me Ekadashi prasad, and this person comes, and I said yes. And I knew that there are no free lunches. We have heard this, so I thought he's going to ask something from me later on. So I went inside because I was hungry. I thought I'll deal with what he wants later, but right now let me satisfy my hunger. And he fed me top class Ekadashi Prasadam and Prabhupada Samadhi. And he was constantly singing bhajans, and I was thinking, what is he going to ask now in return? So after I finished, he was wanting to serve me more, second, third, fourth helping. Like I was like, no. And then he was singing bhajans constantly. And then I said, now he's going to ask. And finally he said, Prabhuji, aap Bombay ke hain? I said, yeah, I'm from Mumbai. Prabhuji, aapse ek help chahiye. But then I said, now he's going to ask. Now he's going to ask a job in Mumbai temple, or he's going to ask for some shawl, because I had an expensive shawl that I was wearing. I thought he may ask something from me. And I was surprised when he said, Prabhuji, aap Bombay ke, aap Chowpatty, itna acha mandir hai, udhar itna acha devotee log hai aap log. आप हमारे लिए प्रार्थना करो कुछ. कि हमको भी शुद्ध भक्ति मिले. I said, what? I thought he's just, he's just building it up. So I said, हाँ वो करेंगे और क्या. और नहीं प्रभु जी, बस आप प्रार्थना करो, हम आपके जैसा भक्त बने. So I said, okay, what else? I was like waiting, he'll say something. I said, आपको कुछ चाहिए प्रभु जी? कुछ नहीं, बस आप प्रार्थना करो. So then he took my plate, he gave me water to wash my hands, and he was very caring, serving. Then I said, प्रभु जी आपको कुछ दूं मैं? कुछ नहीं चाहिए. I said, प्रभु जी कुछ तो लीजिए. बट आप क्या देंगे? हम तो धाम में रहते हैं, हम भगवान का सेवा कर रहे हैं, हमको कुछ नहीं चाहिए, आप हमारे लिए प्रार्थना. He did not take anything from me, and I was so humbled. I felt somebody slapped me. And then I've gone to Mayapur many times, and we meet so many people all the time, and we don't remember them later. But this guy I've never forgot. Every time. So what happened after that incident? I ran to my room. I was staying close by. I had brought some cookies from the temple. I had brought some 8 or 9 packets. I took all of them and I went to him and gave him. I mean, I had kept them for 2 weeks to give it to different people because I was overwhelmed by somebody doing that service. He didn't ask for it. He didn't want anything. I just gave him everything because he practiced pure love. He practiced service without any motivation. So if a hard-hearted person like me, who's so selfish, if I can be moved, just imagine how Krishna would feel, because Krishna is the most soft-hearted personality. He's the Supreme Lord. How much he would feel obliged, how much he would feel when a devotee says, Krishna, I just want to love you. Like, I was reading today 4th canto, 30th chapter, prayers of Prachetas to Lord Vishnu. And I was started laughing when I read one prayer. In one of the prayers, the Prachetas are saying, the Lord is saying, okay, you have pleased me, now ask for a blessing. What blessing do you want? And the Prachetas immediately say, we want the blessing that you are always satisfied with us. When I read that, I was like laughing. Imagine when somebody tells you, ask for a blessing, we immediately think of what I want, right? Okay, I want this because I think of my satisfaction, and that's why I want to take a blessing. But Prachetas, without batting an eyelid, they are saying, okay, we want the blessing that you are satisfied with this. This is Bhagavatam. This is the paradigm shift. You won't find this kind of prayers in any religious scripture. This is very unique because a devotee wants nothing but to love God more. The devotee wants nothing but to serve God more. He wants to please God. See, the ideal is to please Krishna. We are at one level lower. We want to experience Krishna. It's true, without experiencing Krishna. And then, of course, there are pure devotees who want to share Krishna with others. There are 3 aspects to our life. We want to share Krishna, we want to experience Krishna, but ultimately we want to please Krishna. That is our goal. And that is what Srimad Bhagavatam is teaching us. So today we are, I think, on the 4th class or the 5th class of this series. And we are just on the 2nd shloka of the Bhagavatam. Remember, there are 18,000 verses. So as we enter deep into the pastime, as we enter deep into the different stories and the lessons and the prayers and the philosophy, you will be astounded to discover that this is the main theme of Srimad Bhagavatam, that we are servants of God and we want to please God. We don't want anything else in return. And you know what happens when we want nothing else in return? We get everything. and again, that's not the agenda. If that's the agenda, that I want nothing from Krishna so that I can get everything, then again, it's not pure. See, Krishna is smart, okay? We can't fool Krishna. We can't think that, okay, I'm going to tell Krishna, Krishna, I want nothing from you. And then Krishna will, give me everything. Oh, Krishna is smarter. We can't fool Krishna like that. We genuinely want nothing from Krishna. There is a story of a king who was giving charity. And different people, if I'll give one thing to everyone. So different people came from the kingdom, and somebody said, I want a job. Okay, give him a job. Somebody said, oh, king, I'm not getting married. So king told his minister, get a nice girl from him, for him from the royal palace. Get him married. If I thank you, my dear king. Third person came and said, my dear king, I'm staying in a poor village where there are no roads. Please make a proper road. The king told his minister, make a nice road to his village. Fourth person came and said, my dear king, like that, different people ask for different things. One fellow said, my dear king, I have a very bad broken house. The king told his minister, make a nice house for it. So different people asked for different things and the king gave. But the king was surprised when one man entered and he told the king, I want nothing in charity. I just want one thing. I want you to shake hands with me and accept my friendship. The king said, friendship? Yeah, I just want to be a friend. That's okay. We are friends. You asked for something. I'm giving charity today. I'm in a magnanimous mood. He said, yeah, you may be in a magnanimous mood, but I don't want anything. I want you to accept me as your friend. I love you. So the king said, yes, okay, if that's what you want. So he shook hands and then he went. And some ministers were thinking, what a fool this man is. He could have taken something tangible. He could have asked for something specific. He just asked for the king's friendship. But what happened after a few days, the king received a letter. And letter was from the same man. He said, my dear king, I'm your friend, remember? And the king said, yes, I remember. And the letter continued, I am your friend and I love you. You're such a nice king. I want to invite you to my house for overnight stay. I want to serve you lunch, dinner, and breakfast. Please accept this invitation. So the king told his ministers, see, it is a question of my worth and my pride. This man has called me and he's my friend. I have to go. And the minister said, but my dear king, you can't go to his house because he stays very far and it's in a very remote village. There are no roads. The king said, make a proper road. The king cannot go to a place where there are no roads. The road was built. And another minister said, but my dear king, how can you go to him? He has no job. He's an unemployed person and his status is low, so low. King said, then okay, then make him a minister in the kingdom. Give him a good job. Somebody said, my dear king, he's unmarried. He's a vagabond. Oh, get him married. Somebody said he's living in a hut. He has no proper house. King said, make a nice palace for him. How can king's friends stay there? So this fellow didn't ask for anything. He got everything. Different people asked for one thing. They got that. So I'm not saying we should have that attitude. I'm just saying, see, Krishna is the best king. Krishna is the best friend and he's the wealthiest and he's the best. So whatever we want, Krishna will give. Okay, I'm going to share one secret which I have not told in any class to anyone. It's something very personal. You know, my experience of practicing Krishna consciousness in the last 25 years is, now this is something, it's taking me a lot of courage to say this right now. You know, Krishna is so nice. Krishna is so nice. If you have any desire, material desire, you know, like it could be anything, and I don't want to, you know, whatever secret desires you have, you know something, Krishna fulfills them. But if you are a sincere devotee, Krishna fulfills them and he also makes you feel, why the hell did I ask for it? You know, it's like you feel disgusted. You know, Krishna fulfills your desire and then makes you feel, I shouldn't have asked for it. That's Krishna's speciality. So for again coming back to the point, Dharma Projita Kaitavatra Paramas Srimad Bhagavatam is very clear. Srimad Bhagavatam smashes this conception of God for fulfilling my needs. Is this clear to everyone? See, the example I gave of Mayapur, we all have experienced in our lives. Anybody has given us something without an agenda, we want to give everything to them. You know, I want to share one personal story. I'll end with this in a sense, then we'll go to the next theme of this verse. I stayed in my hometown last year for 8 months to take care of my mother. And from childhood, I had an aversion to dogs. I'm nothing against dogs, but somehow I was very uncomfortable with dogs. And somehow I had some phobia or some dislike for whatever reason. My own hang-ups, you know. So in village, you know, there are a lot of dogs. You know that. You know, Indian villages are filled with dogs. And every morning I would go to the local temple there for chanting my japa. And early morning dogs are very ferocious because they think the street belongs to them. And I was in my dhoti kurta and they would like bark, and once almost a dozen dogs attacked me. And I was so scared, and the auto rickshaw came at the right time and I jumped into the auto rickshaw and I saved. I mean, and next day I didn't have the courage to go there. So then I took a stick with me. But when I went there again, I saw so many dogs. I got so scared, I threw away the stick. I mean, I knew that the stick won't work. So I was already afraid of dogs. I was already reluctant to, you know, I never liked the dogs anyways. So then I said, what to do? I have to go to the temple. Then one of the neighbors told me, why don't you carry some biscuits, Parle G 5 rupee biscuits? So then I purchased 3 or 4 packets and then I took them very reluctantly, a lot of fear in my trepidation in my heart because I had never been close. I never liked dogs. I was always afraid of dogs. So when the dogs started coming, I immediately opened the packet and one by one I started throwing the biscuit and I saw the dogs became suddenly friendly because they got the biscuit and they started wagging their tails. And next day when I went, they didn't bark at me at all. And then soon I was their best friend. And a time came when all the dogs would come to me wagging their tails and I would feed them and I started enjoying it. And one day I decided to change the route because there are 2 routes to go to the temple and both routes the dogs would bark at me. One day I changed the route. I went from another route and I was fearful of one dog there. But when I went there, I was shocked. I think these dogs here had communicated to that dog. So when this dog came, he didn't bark at me at all. He could perceive the language, the subtle language. And he came to me wagging his tail. He didn't bark at all. And of course, I had my biscuits. I fed the dog. So after a few days, I realized dogs are my best friend. I started liking them. And they started liking me. And then what happened was this is the most amazing part of my unforgettable lesson in my life. And one day when I went in the morning to the temple as usual, I was about to discover a life-changing experience. One dog came to me and I opened the biscuit packet and I threw the biscuit and the dog didn't eat the biscuit. He just kept looking at me and he kept wagging his tail. And I threw another biscuit. So I was wondering, why is he not taking it? So I started walking away. He came behind me wagging his tail. I mean, for so long, he was following me, followed me for a distance of 3 kilometers. I had been feeding him biscuits every day. And in between, I was throwing the biscuit, but he was not eating that biscuit. He was just coming, he was looking at me and coming behind me. And finally, I realized he wants a reciprocation, he wants some affection. So I bent below and I never touched the dog. I used to always find it, yeah. And street dogs, never. But somehow I was overwhelmed with emotion and affection for the dog. I started rubbing the dog's, this forehead, and the dog started wagging its tail more. And I was like, wow, I was actually experiencing loving reciprocation with the dog and this species I hated or disliked for so long. And then when I came back to my house, I was so touched. I said, this dog didn't want the biscuits. He just wanted me to love him. I mean, see, there are different levels at which my relationship with dog. First was the fear. And then there was reward. The dogs are barking at me because they're afraid of me. And then they started expecting reward from me. But when they wanted nothing, when this dog wanted nothing from me, that's when this dog extracted most love from my heart. So similarly, in one sense, we are like dogs, when we are new in Krishna consciousness, when devotees preach Krishna consciousness to us, we start barking because we are afraid, we are defensive, our egos are hurt. Many of us, we ask challenging questions to devotees. We protest against Krishna consciousness. But then devotees start offering prasadam, they start saying kind words, and then we are happy, we start wagging our tails, we say, yeah, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Because Krishna consciousness gives us something tangible in return. Like, we get good friendships, we get good kirtans, we get good prasadam. So it's like we are happy because we get something from Krishna. But Krishna is waiting us to become the third kind of a dog where, we look at Krishna and say, Krishna, okay, when you have given me enough, I don't want anything from you. I just want to follow you. I just want to be with you. And when we are at that stage, Krishna will say, yes, he is my favorite, he's my favorite pet. He is my best. So if you want to become Krishna's favorite, we have to tell Krishna, Krishna, you already given me enough biscuits, you are giving it to me every day, and I just want to be with you. Actually, this was the difference between Arjuna and Duryodhana. If you see in the Mahabharata, both Arjuna and Duryodhana went to Krishna for help. But what happened was interesting. Duryodhana reached first to take help from Krishna, but he sat at Krishna's head, next to Krishna's head. And Arjuna sat near Krishna's feet. So when Krishna woke up, he saw Arjuna first and he said, Arjuna, you ask for any blessing, anything you want? And Duryodhana said, but I came first. Krishna said, no, you are sitting on my head. Arjuna is sitting at my feet. So I saw him first and he's younger to you. So I give him the chance to ask first. So both of them wanted help for the Mahabharata war. And then Krishna said, on one side is my entire Narayana Sena, my army. My army will be yours. On the other side, I will be there, but I won't pick up any weapon. I won't fight at all. What do you want? And Arjuna said, what will I do with your army? I don't want your army. I want you. And even if you don't fight, it's okay. Just be there with me. Duryodhan couldn't believe his luck. He was overjoyed. He was thinking, what a fool this Arjuna is. He's asking for Krishna. And then, but he wanted to pretend as if he is disappointed. So he feigned sadness. He said, oh, Krishna, then I'll have to do with your army, what to do. I would have wished you were there on my side. And with great jubilation, he ran to Shakuni and said, yeah, I got the entire army of Krishna. But you know what happened in the Mahabharata war, right? Arjuna won the war thanks to Krishna, who didn't pick up any weapons. So Arjuna wanted only Krishna. He didn't want Krishna's resources. Duryodhana did not want Krishna. He wanted only Krishna's resources. So are we like Duryodhana or Arjuna? We want Krishna or we want Krishna's energy? We want Krishna's material blessings or we want only Krishna? If you ask for only Krishna, then everything comes with him. Of course, that should not be our agenda. We simply want to love Krishna. But if you are like Duryodhana, see, demoniac people are those who want things from Krishna. And that's why they suffer. So let us have proper priorities. So this is what Srimad Bhagavatam is emphasizing. Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo. This is the highest religion which kicks out all cheating religion. And nirmat saranam satam. Non-envious, pure-hearted devotees can appreciate this. This is very important. A devotee only can appreciate this aspect of Srimad Bhagavatam and God. Otherwise, most people, they want things from God. They cannot understand God as someone whom we simply want to love. And then the next line says, Vedyam vastava matra vastu shivadam tapatrayon moolanam. Srimad Bhagavatam will present the highest truth, which is reality distinguished from illusion. And what does that mean? It means Srimad Bhagavatam will help us remove the threefold miseries. It will uproot those miseries from the heart. Now, what this means in simple words is, in very simple language, because our theme is life lessons from Srimad Bhagavatam, the life lesson from the second line of the second verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam is, there are three kinds of miseries in our lives caused by these three modes: Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Sattva is mode of goodness, Rajas is passion, Rajoguna, and Tamas is darkness or ignorance. These three energies combine to create havoc in our lives. But when we take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, the miseries caused by these three modes, they dissipate. And we are able to experience God, reality as distinguished from illusion. Right now, what we experience in our lives is mostly illusion. Thanks to the electronic age, thanks to our smartphones, most of the time we experience illusion. We don't experience reality. You are only seeing light coming on the screen of your smartphone, right? Especially the blue light. It keeps you awake all the time. The blue light on your smartphone. Now, there are three kinds of realities. First is eternal reality, which we'll not discuss now. The second reality is the reality of this world, which is reality, but it is temporary. But there is another reality, which is actually no reality, which is illusion, and that is the reality you see on an electronic screen. Like today evening, it was raining a lot, but I decided to go for my evening walk, as usual, to Hanging Garden. And I was surprised, pleasantly surprised. There was nobody there. And I was the only one walking for 1 hour with my umbrella. And I was so happy walking. And imagine if you had access to walking, or if you had access to rains, for example, if you see rains on your electronic screen, a beautiful rain has been captured on a video camera and it is shown on a video. And you see that rain on your YouTube video. and then you see real rain outside the window of your house. Which of the two will give you a more richer experience? The real rain, right? Because it is real, although it is temporary, but it is real. Whereas the rain that you're seeing on the electronic screen is not existing, it's illusion. So Srimad Bhagavatam will present God as a reality as distinguished from illusion, which means Bhagavatam will help us experience Krishna as a reality. See, there are things that titillate our senses, but there are experiences which take us deeper. So Srimad Bhagavatam doesn't want to simply give you sensual experiences. Like when I'm watching a rain on a YouTube videos, let's say we watch you watch some song or a dance in the rain on an electronic screen, and you feel happy. But that happiness is simply pleasure, which is experienced by the senses, eyes, ears, nose, touch. But when you walk in the rain and you allow the rain to touch your body, and you feel the rain on your, and you smell the fragrance of the rainwater and the earth mixing, and you see the raindrops creating a puddle, and you smell the fragrances of the flowers, and you feel the rain on your skin, that gives you a much deeper experience, isn't it? So similarly, Bhagavatam is telling us that, okay, you want to experience God, then please experience God as a reality distinguished from illusion, which means connect to the personality of Godhead. Don't just be distracted by the superficial things. See, there are experiences, sometimes people like for example, once I was on a walk, one person came from in front of me, and lot of he had put strong perfume. So when he walked past me, it like, that that smell, that fragrance entered my nostrils, and I knew it was a pleasant smell, but it wasn't satisfying at all as compared to what happened after 2 minutes. I was walking across another section of the park where I smelled the fragrance of fresh flowers, and that fragrance entered my nostrils, and the experience was much deeper, more fulfilling. Similarly, just like this experience we all have, similarly, in relation to spirituality also, sometimes we get very superficial experiences in life, very superficial. We may just like some jokes, something entertaining, some stand-up comedian says something, or some funny jokes, or some nice analogies, or some impactful, some movies or some drama. All those things are like, they they create a sensual experience. But satisfaction, kind of experience of Krishna is much deeper. So when we read Bhagavatam and we hear Bhagavatam sincerely, that takes us to a deeper level of experience. And that is what Srimad Bhagavatam is inviting us to experience. And therefore the third line says, Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimva Parerishwara. This Srimad Bhagavatam was composed by Vyasdev at the maturity of his realizations. So that's the best part. It was not a novice who wrote Bhagavatam. It was written by somebody who had already realized everything. But then Kim va Parerishwara, what else is needed? If you have got Bhagavatam, then you don't need anything else. In the Bhagavatam, there is a nice verse in the 4th canto which says, when a bumblebee goes to the Parijata flower, it's a very beautiful analogy. Parijata anjasa labdha saranga anyona sevate tvadangri moolam asadya sakshat kim vrinimai. So the devotee is telling Lord that, my dear Lord, Parijata anjasa labdha. When the bumblebee goes to Parijata flower, Saranga means bumblebee, Anyona sevate, he stops going to other flowers. He's going to different flowers, but once he comes to Parijata flower, the nectar he gets from there is so satisfying that he stops going to the other flowers. We say, the devotee is saying, my dear Lord, similarly, Tvadangri Moolam Asadya, I have come to your lotus feet and I'm experiencing some nectar there. Sakshat Kim Kim Mai. Now, why do I need to go anywhere else? That's what Srimad Bhagavatam is saying. We don't need to go anywhere else because we have come to Krishna. So Srimad Bhagavatam is inviting us. You have come here, oh dear pilgrim, your search has ended. You have come to Krishna. And why the Bhagavatam is saying that? Because the last line reveals Sadhyo Hridaya Varuddhata Kritibi Shushrustubhi Takshana. Because by taking shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord will be established in the heart. So that when the Lord is established in the heart, there is satisfaction. I know some examples of some people who started reading Bhagavatam and suddenly they felt life is auspicious, they felt life is good, they felt sab kuch acha hai. Prabhu, there's a lot of suffering in my life, but okay, I'm peaceful. Now, there are people who are endowed, financially endowed, there are people who have been gifted, they have good health, but still they're miserable because they're living in a space of ingratitude and some vacuum. Undefined melancholy grips them. But when we read Bhagavatam, it's like, having discovered a very special companion with whom you can share silence for hours, with whom you can spend solitary moments of belongingness and togetherness. And Srimad Bhagavatam gives us that togetherness. So therefore, this is the verdict of the Bhagavatam, that Shushrustvi, if we hear Bhagavatam attentively, the last line says, Lord will be established in the heart. The Lord will come, the Lord will reveal himself to us, and he will give us an experience of Krishna. So this is the second verse in a nutshell. And next session, we'll go to the third verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. So any questions or comments regarding what we have discussed today?
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Very nice class. Very involved and basically very putting us in a higher status. At the same time, Prabhu, when you were saying that we should want to love Krishna, please Krishna, and just we want nothing from Krishna, just for that is you're talking from the platform of like basically pure devotee in the sense like just want the evolved state of life, finally. But I mean, at the same time, and the conditions life and struggling with the material world, with the body, mind, senses, and desire, let's say whatever. So basically, we sometimes when you tell this yourself, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we can't be holier than thou. In the sense like we have to be who we are. At the same time, we should not artificially be at that level. Okay, and actually I don't want anything, but actually maybe with the heart, maybe have some desire. So how do we balance these things, understand these things in our life? Because that's the highest stage we are talking about. So just simply being with Krishna, loving Krishna, there's nothing. That's a very pure stage of the heart, and so in the present situation, how do we understand?
If I understand you correctly, Rasik Govind Prabhu, you are saying, on the one hand, we say, ask only for pure love of Krishna. Krishna, I only want to love you, nothing else. But you are saying it's so artificial at our stage because we have so many desires, we have so many problems. So if you don't ask from Krishna help for our problems, are we not being very artificial in our prayers?
Yeah, because in the sense, because in the heart we want to be from suffering. We don't want stress, anxiety. We don't want to be hurt. All those things are the emotions that we don't want to be, hurt or feel depressed and all that stress, whatever. We want to be happy. So these are material things, but so material emotions also we feel that the need they should be happy materially also that way of thing.
So you are asking, how do we balance with asking only pure love of Krishna and also with our own needs and desires and challenges and problems which we want Krishna to help us with?
Right? Yeah, exactly.
So the answer to this question is be honest with Krishna. We can come in front of Krishna and say, Krishna, I love you. I only want to love you. I want nothing from you. But right now, I'm not at that level. Okay. I want to one day reach that level where I ask from you nothing but only give you service. But right now, I'm really struggling with my job. Can you please help me, Krishna? Please help me. I'm your devotee. And Krishna, I'm a fool. I don't know what to pray to you. I right now want help in my job. So I'm asking you for this. Krishna, but I'm a fool. I don't know what to pray. So next time when I come in front of you, please give me the intelligence to ask for the right things. But right now, I want this. So when you pray like this, you are being honest also about your present challenge, and you're also aspiring for something higher. So Krishna sees, he's very honest. He is, he's really struggling with his problems, but he's also aspiring for something better than present situation.
Okay.
So this way we are balancing both honesty and aspiring for highest. Because you are absolutely correct. We cannot artificially ask from Krishna pure love of God when we are at a very low level.
Correct.
See, if a child doesn't ask his parents for things that are good for him, whom will he ask? So Bhagavatam says, even if you have material desires, ask from Krishna.
Okay, Prabhu.
Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusha param. The second kind of Bhagavatam says, if you have no desire or if you are full of material desires, come to Krishna. Krishna will fulfill them in such a way. Remember, I said one example in the class today that, my experience is Krishna fulfills your desire, but then gives you the realization that I should not have asked for it. Krishna, it was not worth it. No, I don't know why I asked for it. It is not worth it. So Krishna will fulfill our desires, but he will also, if he's really kind to you, he will give you the realization that you shouldn't have asked for it. or he'll give you the realization that Krishna, theek hai, maine manga, aapne diya, but it's over. Now I don't want this anymore.
Okay.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you.
Prabhuji. Prabhuji, coming to that question and coming to that answer that you gave, Prabhuji, now this desire, Krishna already knows that this is my desire. He already knows because he is Paramatma, he's sitting in my heart. So now, if at all he's not giving, again, there is a reason for it, for not giving. And I'm feeling he's not giving. So how do we understand this, Prabhuji, now?
How do we understand what?
Prabhuji, just as Rasik Govind Prabhu said, and you said that yes, you can ask, okay, this is my desire, please fulfill that. At present, this is my desire, please fulfill that. Now, Krishna very well knows this. And he has a reason for not giving also, Prabhuji. Yeah, because what we have learned is Krishna gives us what we need and not what we want. So now it may be wrong, totally wrong what we are desiring, and that is the reason Krishna is not giving to us. So then now what happens? He's not fulfilling the desire, and I'm feeling that Krishna is not answering. How do we understand this, Prabhuji, further?
Yeah, basically it requires maturity. You are a mature devotee who knows that Krishna is not fulfilling my desires because he knows better. But many of us are stubborn and we are materialistic. So, better to learn the hard way. But what happens now when we come to Krishna again and again, we become Krishna conscious. Our desires get purified. But ideally, what you're saying is the best. We need to understand there is a reason why Krishna is not fulfilling. But we don't know. Sometimes, God's delays are not God's denials. Sometimes some things are delayed to us and we think we are being denied that. So we really don't know what's coming up. So better to ask. That's why I said end the prayer by saying, Krishna, I'm a fool. I don't know what is the right thing to pray. So if we have that disclaimer in the end, Krishna will take care of us. Otherwise, we'll become very stubborn. We'll become like materialistic people, who are asking God always for material things. Therefore, even if you ask for material things, you should end by saying, Krishna, give me what is best for me. If you so desire, then give me this. But I trust you. There is a reason why you will give me or you won't give me. See, if a child goes to a shopkeeper with 100 rupees and says, give me the best cigarette packet, the shopkeeper will give him. But if the child goes to his parent and says, give me cigarettes, the parent will give him a slap. So similarly, sometimes we go to different babas, devtas and ask for material things, you may get it. If you do certain puja, certain yagya, material things you may get. But if Krishna, if you go and ask for material things, if it's not good for us, Krishna may give us suffering. Because Krishna really cares for us. But it requires maturity to see that Krishna is kind and Krishna is not giving us for a reason. But at our level, it's better to ask from Krishna and also end by saying, Krishna, I don't know.
This is a better thing, better way to put our prayers. Yes. Disclaimer, as you said. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu. I want to thank all of you.
Prabhuji, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Prabhuji, it's always recommended that we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, but at times, like we have the book Bhagavatam, and suppose we also have in the Veda base in our phone. So at times, it becomes easy for us to use our phone and read it from the Veda base. So I just want to, know that whether we should read the book as a Bhagavatam, or we can also, alternatively, can we read it from our phones?
I actually read it on the Kindle. I was traveling last 1 week. I was reading the electronic, but when I'm in temple, when I have access to the Bhagavatam, book Bhagavatam, I read. But I can't carry it, everywhere. So I have fortunately Kindle, so I carry and I read on this, and this helps me. This all the 18 cantos plus all the other books are there, and it's light. Although this is not the best option, but what to do? Modern times, extraordinary situations calls for extraordinary efforts. Ideal is to read on print and paper. Somehow it has a special effect, but Prabhupada said, make best use of a bad bargain. So life throws up a lot of bad bargains, so make the best use. So if you have a Kindle version and if you can read, see, the point is, are you able to read slowly with contemplation? If that is happening, it doesn't matter, I know one couple, because of COVID, they just got married. And he was in Amsterdam and she was in Mumbai. And for 1.5 years, they couldn't meet. So they used to only talk on video calls. So of course, now he came back to Mumbai and it's all, nice. So they made best use of a bad bargain. So they stayed connected through WhatsApp video calls and, Zoom calls and things like that. But that's not the best. The best is to personally meet the person you love. But when you can't, what do you do? So if that is the mood, then it's okay to read on the phone or the computer.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. May I ask you one question, Prabhuji? Is it okay? Time permits?
Yeah.
Okay, Prabhuji, we just discussed about the analogy of the dog and the human psychology, the example that you told us, that how you felt that the dog was looking for affection. So, Prabhuji, this looking for affection, when you said that we also have to rise to that level, that affection level, I may have completely misunderstood the whole thing. Is affection or looking for affection also a desire? For spiritual context, I'm trying to understand that.
It's natural and necessary.
Natural and necessary.
Affection is natural and necessary. If you see in the nest, the way the birds are giving affection to their small children which have come out of the egg, you'll see that affection is there. You see the cow giving affection to the calf. You will see it is natural. It's there in all species. And it is also necessary. If my parents hadn't given me affection, I wouldn't be sane today. So our grandparents give us a lot of love, affection. I grew up with my grandparents, and they showered me with a lot of love and affection. So I think affection is natural and also necessary.
I'm talking about looking out for affection from the Lord.
Well, that is more than natural, more than necessary. That is all the more necessary.
It doesn't come in the category of desire, that this is the desire only that we are. I don't know. I'm not able to.
Desire is needed. See, we are not against desire. I think I may have miscommunicated. Spiritual life is not killing desire.
No, I may be misunderstood, and I was just
no. Spiritual life is not against desire. It's not that we want to finish off our desire by practicing spiritual life. We want to have healthy desire.
Healthy desire. Huh.
See, desire, you can never take desire out of a living entity. Just like you cannot take liquidity out of water, just like you cannot take saltiness from a salt. You cannot take desire out of a living entity. Desire is as natural to us, very, very natural to us. So why not desire the love of the Lord? Otherwise, we will desire affection and love in this world, which will always get frustrated. But if we experience and seek love from the Lord, then that fulfillment will help us give love selflessly in this world. And when we give love selflessly in this world, we get a lot of love in this world also. And then we will be surprised. We will say, Are, how am I getting so much love in this world? You are getting it because you're not expecting it here. You're taking it from another source. But if you're expecting from this world and you are like fighting for it, struggling for it, you'll get frustrated here. So affection from Krishna we should always aspire for. In fact, we should be constantly looking for ways to experience God's love in our heart. Some people experience it through deity worship, some people experience it through service, some people experience it through learning of shlokas. Somehow or the other, we need to seek that emotional fulfillment in bhakti. If we don't find emotional fulfillment in Krishna consciousness, either we will leave this practice or we will become hard-hearted devotees.
Yes, Praveen. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I sincerely thank all of you for your participation. We'll meet again next week. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.